In our top stories, the various parties in the NCC dispute are at this hour meeting at the Labour Department's offices in Warrens under the chairmanship of Labour Minister Senator Dr. Esther Bayersuku. The parties involved are making yet another attempt to try to resolve the impasse over the retrenchment of nearly 200 workers from the state-owned entity. Earlier today, the minister met separately with the trade unions and then the management of the NCC. She then brought the two sides together for a joint meeting at 5, and those talks are still ongoing. This is after talks broke down yesterday between the NCC's management, the National Union of Public Workers, and the Barbados Workers Union. The parties met with officials from the Labour Department to take a closer look at names on a so-called list to see exactly how those workers were selected to be sent home. Earlier today, Minister Dr. Esther Bayersuku told CBC News she could not impose a ruling but could offer suggestions.
It's not a case where they present their case to me and I make a ruling, in which case it would have been done a long time ago under the acting minister last week or so. But the nature of negotiations is that both sides have to come to an agreement. You know, I can only help to push them in that direction and help to guide their thinking, nudge them gently along. So sometimes it happens quickly, sometimes not so fast. And, my role here is also to help the sides to see what is really at stake.
And with reference to suggestions that the NUPW is mobilizing its members following the breakdown in talks, Minister Suku said she wasn't informed of any industrial action.
I know they have agreed to come back to meet with me, so I would imagine that as long as we're still meeting, the talks broke down at that level yesterday, but they still have agreed to come back to me. Ordinarily, you wouldn't then take action, while you've agreed to continue talking at a different level.
The Queen Elizabeth Hospital is refuting media reports that the dialysis unit has been closed since it first opened. Hospital officials said the discovery of the Pseudomonas bacteria resulted in management taking a series of immediate steps to address the situation. These included the flushing and chlorination of water tanks, machinery, and water treatment machines. Dr. James says the exercise was carried out over the weekend of Saturday, May 17th. As a result, patients who were to receive treatment on the third shift on that day were outsourced to an existing provider. This was to ensure that their care was not compromised and to assure their safety. The QEH says after this rigorous process, steps were taken to test the water supply to ensure that the colonization of the bacteria is within acceptable levels. Director of Medical Services, Mr. Anthony Harris, said the hospital has stepped up the cleansing process between dialysis patients and will continue to closely monitor the level of bacteria to ensure that patient care is not compromised. Meanwhile, the opposition Barbados Labour Party wants government to come clean on the true state of the QEH. The BLP says there are a number of questions relating to health care at that institution that have gone unanswered. During a press conference at the office of the opposition leader, Senator Dr. Jerome Walcott outlined a number of concerns he says they want answers to. They relate to the accident and emergency, the cardiac suite, the obstetrics theatre, and the Lions Eye Care Centre. Dr. Walcott, a former Minister of Health, is querying if sterilizers are malfunctioning and if there's a shortage of drugs. He's telling government and the QEH administration of his concerns for patients.
Despite the smoke and mirrors and the talk of cheap politics, the reality is that we are dealing with people's lives. The QEH is the one place where most Barbadians will have to go for treatment at some stage in their lives. They have to be confident that when they go there, they will get the best care. It is therefore the one place where we have to get it right in this country.
The Barbados Horticultural Society has done it again, winning a gold award at the 2014 Chelsea Flower Show. Barbados was in winner's row on day one of the show in the tropical flowers category. This is the island's 16th gold medal at the event organized by the Royal Horticultural Society in Britain. Queen Elizabeth was present to browse many of the exhibits. The Chelsea Flower Show runs until Saturday. The Ministry of Social Care, Constituency Empowerment and Community Development is developing an institutional framework to initiate and coordinate Barbados's efforts to strengthen relations between the sexes. Word of this from Minister Steve Blackett at the Caribbean Development Bank's National Stakeholder Workshop on Gender. This will be done with assistance from the Bureau of Gender Affairs.
This framework seeks to address 6 major issues. Those issues are power and decision-making, health and education, employment, poverty and housing, family and sexuality, culture, language and spirituality, and violence and crime. The findings of this assessment will strengthen our understanding of where we are and what needs to be done.
Major benefits are in store for MCTV's more mature audiences in just over a week, thanks to the signing of a new agreement. Ryan Broom reports.
Thanks to a major new partnership between MultiChoice Television and the Barbados Association of Retired Persons, major savings are in store for BARP members from June 1st. BARP's President Ed Bushell signed the agreement with Chief MCTV Officer Andrew Green at BARP's Coleman Rock office. Mr. Bushell says BARP had an input in the selection of a new basic package for its members, which will be a combination of MCTV's basic and plus packages.
We recognize that in people on fixed income, that their ability to pay the full price for all the packages, all of the channels that are available, was not very feasible. And when we talked to our members, they said, yeah, there's some programs we'd love to have, but we don't want all the others. And so given that in mind, we looked at these channels and we picked out, so all of the ABC, CBS, CBC, NBC, the standard networks are there, right? Of course, CaribVision is there, CNN is there, BBC World is there.
CNN International.
Yeah, CNN International is there. The religious channels that were of interest to our demographic especially is there.
In addition, while BARP's members previously enjoyed 50% off new installations, members who want new installations from June 1st will get them free of cost. BARP members will also now get a dedicated line at CBC. Chief MCTV Officer Andrew Green says CBC is pleased to give BARP members the new benefits.
We are very mindful with MCTV that those persons who are members of BARP and persons who are of the demographic that BARP serves, they're the ones who built MCTV. MCTV has been in existence for some 26 years. It will be 27 years this year. And we owe it to the persons who are considered the elder persons of this society for the success that MCTV has had over the years. They have stuck with us, and we feel that at this juncture that we should also stick with those persons.
Reporting from BARP's headquarters in Coleman Rock, I'm Ryan Broom for CBC News.
Barbadians are being warned that the dry spell they have been experiencing could get drier, as weather experts are indicating that there might be a delay to the start of this year's wet season. This is what Adrian Trotman, the Chief of Applied Meteorology and Hydrology at the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology, told CBC this morning. He said the season, which normally begins in the first week of June, could be delayed by a few weeks. He adds that data collected indicates the upcoming wet spell may contain less rain than past years. This comes on the heels of dry conditions which were experienced throughout April.
Typically, the rainfall season starts in June, right? And so we're a month away from the typical start. So we ought to expect, because of that, some increase in rainfall throughout May into June and so on. But what we are suggesting as a great likelihood is that start of the season could well be later than normal based on the conditions and the drivers in the atmosphere.
Meantime, climatologist Cedric Van Meer Beck is advising the public to save water, as the decrease in rainfall could impact the water levels during the next year's dry season. Obedience is key, and parents must always instill this in their children. This advice has come from volunteer at Paradise, Harriet Small. The counselor was speaking as the organization hosted a workshop as part of activities to mark Child Month.
You have to obey the traffic rules. You have to obey the policeman who does this when you are in a rush. So obedience is really about respect, okay? Respect and authority. Things like lying and stealing and bullying and strife, all of those stem from an attitude of disrespect.
Ms. Small wants parents to respect their children and to speak to them as valued individuals.
So when you speak with your children, even in your effort to discipline, to correct behavior, to disciple, to teach things, you speak to that child as if they were a valued individual and not as a hardened criminal. Our children must also understand that whether they agree with us or whether they feel as if they agree with us in the moment, what you require from them is respect. This is what you require.
MP for St. Thomas, Cynthia Ford, wants parents, grandparents, and even teachers to be cognizant of the roles they play in nurturing children.
All these caregivers and so must all remember to live by example, since the eyes and the ears of the youth are always focused on them and on us and our actions. And you know, children like little sponges. They pick up, they suck in the good, the bad, and the ugly. We are the ones that are to help to wean out the bad or to block that bad from impacting on them and display what we know is always good.
The Barbados Government Information Service, or BGIS, now has fully integrated social media platforms. It has a dedicated YouTube channel along with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, while the existing website has been upgraded. The new features were announced during an official launch at the Almond Bay in Hastings. The Acting Chief Information Officer Sharon Lynch says the addition of social media platforms will make a major difference in the way the BGIS carries out its mandate of disseminating information.
These new tools are being added to what we already have. We will certainly continue to utilize the traditional media, press, radio, and television to communicate with the general public. Adding social media will simply allow us to cater to a wider demographic and to fill some missing gaps. For example, the area of feedback is one which we've been unable to effectively carry out. We will now be able to gather feedback on our BGIS productions and other trending subjects.
Ms. Lynch says the BGIS also has other plans.
In a few weeks' time, we will launch a BGIS YouTube newscast in which we hope to be able to give greater insight into government's activities. We also envisage the effective use of Facebook and Twitter during times of emergency. For example, in any given month, we are called upon to send out several urgent radio spots on subjects such as school closures. While radio stations are always very cooperative in such matters, our social media presence will afford us speedier dissemination and a wider reach.
Meanwhile, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Senator Darcy Boyce, lauded the BGIS for the effort. He sees it as a way to reach younger audiences.
I urge the staff of the Government Information Service, therefore, to continue the quest to introduce this modern new technology. I also encourage you to take up the challenge to utilize that technology in more creative ways to draw in the reluctant consumer, to attract new audiences, and widen your demographic. You now have an opportunity to grab the attention and establish a dialogue between government and its young citizens, the future leaders of this country.
And speaking of younger audiences, Barbados could have its first children's museum within 2 years. Word of this has come from the Deputy Director of the Barbados Museum, Kevin Farmer. He says this will form one of the museum's outreach efforts as it aims to attract a younger demographic. Other initiatives the museum will be utilizing include an increased presence on social media networks such as Instagram, along with its annual Junior Curator program. His comments came after the museum made a presentation of 3 books to the Minister of Culture, Stephen Lashley, at the ministry's Kaimal offices.
But also ensure that we have a space where young people, and we say children, We're talking about ages 3 to 11, which is early childhood, just the 11 plus, where they have a space to explore, to develop creative thinking skills, to understand and realize not only what history is, but how they can interact with, engage, and create things for themselves. And that's what we're trying to do in that particular space.
Mr. Farmer says the museum will also be seeking to prepare an independence exhibit to commemorate Barbadia's 50th anniversary of independence.
Not a date everyone has at the front of their brain, but to us as historians it's quite pivotal and very important that at that particular date we tell the story of our island since independence.